The nanny said, "Sir, your daughter isn't autistic. She just needs affection." Days later, his life changed. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this story from? And if you enjoy real love stories full of emotion and with heartwarming endings, subscribe to the channel. That way, you help me keep bringing content that inspires, moves, and helps the channel grow every day. Charlotte, North Carolina, early autumn. The trees framed the streets with reddish leaves dancing in the wind, but inside the mansion, in the gated neighborhood of Foxcroft, time seemed to stand still. The silence was dense, almost suffocating. Benjamin Walker, 38 years old, walked through the halls of the house as if wandering through ruins. Tall, with perfectly combed brown hair and tired bluish-gray eyes, he dressed with minimalist elegance. Dark dress pants, a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, and a designer watch that seemed far too expensive for the days he was living. His face bore the features of someone who had aged too quickly, marked by the pain of loss and the rigidity he built to keep from falling apart. Upstairs, Lily's room remained with the door slightly open. The 5-year-old girl, with fair skin and fine blonde hair, sat in the corner of the rug, holding a worn-out teddy bear in her arms. Her big blue eyes didn't look at anyone. She hadn't spoken since her mother's funeral. She didn't smile, she didn't cry. She doesn't respond to simple commands, nor does she make eye contact, read one of the reports piled on Benjamin's desk. Typical autistic spectrum behavior, the last specialist had repeated. And Benjamin, who buried himself in work to avoid thinking, accepted it like someone signing a sentence without objection. He no longer knew how to reach his own daughter, not out of cruelty, but out of fear of breaking something even more fragile than himself. That afternoon, he was finishing a video conference in his home office. The light from the monitor lit up his tense face. The phone rang. "Mr. Walker, this is the agency. The new caregiver just arrived. Miss Mendez." He sighed. Another one. Since Elizabeth's death, none had stayed more than 2 weeks. When Clara walked through the door, Benjamin barely looked up. She was young, maybe 30 years old. Average height, light brown skin, long wavy brown hair tied back simply. She wore dark jeans and a light blue shirt. She carried a simple backpack and a calm yet steady gaze. There was a quiet sweetness in the way she walked, as if not wanting to disturb the silence of the house. "Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. I'm Clara Mendez. I was sent by the agency." Benjamin just nodded. "Lily's in her room, 3rd door on the right. She doesn't speak. She likes to be alone. Her meal and bath times are on the fridge." "Understood. Thank you." Her voice was sweet but firm. Clara didn't wait for instructions on how to feel. She went up the stairs in silence, like someone entering sacred ground. Upstairs, she knelt beside little Lily without touching her. She just stayed there on the floor, at the girl's level. After a few seconds, she took a small children's book with textured drawings out of her bag. This one's called "The Girl Who Spoke to the Stars." "I really like it. I wonder if you'd like to hear it." Lily didn't respond, didn't look. But Clara kept going, page after page, reading in a low voice, with a soft rhythm. At the end of the book, a tear quietly slid down Clara's cheek. "You don't have to look at me, little one. I just want you to know I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." That night, Benjamin walked down the hallway, and for the first time in months heard a different sound. It was almost a sigh, a softer breath coming from his daughter's room. He stopped at the door and looked. Clara was sitting on the floor, her back to him, with Lily lying next to her, hugging the bear and the hem of Clara's shirt. Benjamin frowned. He didn't understand. The next morning, Clara was preparing Lily's breakfast. She carefully placed cut-up fruit on a colorful plate. Lily was sitting at the table, no reaction. Until Clara whispered something in Spanish. O te ves hermosa hoy, estrella. The girl blinked, just once, but it was enough to make Clara smile. Later, while Benjamin was closing a folder of documents in his office, Clara appeared at the door. "May I speak with you for a moment?" He didn't look, just nodded. She stepped in. "About Lily." "Yes, it's hard, I know. If you're not comfortable, the agency can—" "No, that's not it." She took a deep breath, crossed, her arms like someone bracing for what they were about to say. "With all due respect, I don't think your daughter is autistic." Benjamin looked up for the first time. He stared at her without blinking. "Are you a doctor?" "I have a degree in child psychology. My diploma hasn't been validated here yet, so I work as a nanny while I get that sorted out." She stepped closer. "What I see in your daughter isn't neurological isolation. It's fear." She didn't stop speaking because of a disorder. She stopped because no one touched her with affection anymore. "Are you implying that I'm not blaming anyone? I see a child screaming in silence, and a father who stopped listening because he's trying to survive too." Benjamin didn't move. Something in her words hit deep, but he said nothing. Clara looked at him for another second, then finished gently. "Mr. Walker, your daughter just needs affection." And then, without waiting for a reply, she turned and left the office, leaving behind not just a perplexed man, but maybe, for the first time, someone who was starting to feel again. Clara closed the office door, gently, as if honoring the fragility she had just touched. The sound of the doorknob echoed down the quiet hallway. Benjamin stood still at the desk, staring at the empty chair where she'd been just seconds before. Her words still lingered in the room, ringing like an uncomfortable truth. "Your daughter just needs affection." He rubbed his face with both hands, exhausted. He wasn't the type of man to let himself be affected by others' opinions, but there was something about the way Clara spoke, something too sincere to ignore. That night the house felt darker than usual. The lights were on, but something was missing, as if the furniture had been placed there out of obligation, not desire. The walls were painted in neutral, cold tones. The floorless wooden floor creaked under Benjamin's steps. The only framed photo of his wife sat on the mantel, flanked by 2 unlit candles. Her smile in that photo seemed distant, almost unfamiliar. Benjamin poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood there, staring at the unlit fireplace. His eyes were drawn to the staircase leading to the second floor. He climbed it in silence, like someone stepping into a place that no longer felt like his own. Lily's bedroom door was slightly ajar. He pushed it gently. Clara was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, and Lily was asleep on a blanket on the rug. The teddy bear was wrapped in the girl's arms. For the first time, her breathing was calm. Benjamin stepped closer, slowly. Clara looked up. She didn't say anything, just gave a soft smile, like someone who knew any word could break the sacred stillness. He looked at his daughter for a few seconds, then whispered, "She's better." Clara nodded. Today she drew for the first time. It was a blue star. She said it was her mommy watching from up above. Benjamin swallowed hard. The whiskey seemed to rise in his throat. He couldn't meet Clara's gaze. He turned toward his daughter and knelt beside her. He ran his fingers through the girl's blonde hair hesitantly, like touching a fragile flower for the first time in years. "I don't know how to do this, Clara." "Do what?" "Be a dad. For real." She answered softly but firmly. "You don't have to know everything right now. You just have to be here. She'll feel it." He stayed there, kneeling beside his sleeping daughter, like someone finally admitting what they had denied for so long, that he was broken. And that maybe there was still time to fix the pieces. The next morning, the sky was overcast. Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. The sheets still smelled like his wife's fabric softener. He hadn't had the courage to change it. When he finally came down to the kitchen, he found Clara placing pancakes on Lily's plate, shaped like hearts. The girl still wasn't speaking, but she looked at the plate and smiled, small, quick, almost unnoticeable. But it was a smile. Benjamin stopped in the doorway as if witnessing a miracle right in front of him. "She smiled," he said, surprised. Clara looked back. She just needed to be seen. But the moment was interrupted by a phone notification. It was from the school. The principal was informing him that due to Lily's non-verbal behavior, she could be placed in a special inclusion program based on previous evaluations. Benjamin frowned. The phone trembled in his hand. Later, while speaking with the same doctor who had signed the report, Benjamin asked, What if you're wrong? Mr. Walker, all the signs point to this. Your daughter's reactions, the isolation, it's what we'd call a textbook case. I would recommend continuing with the light medication we prescribed. Benjamin hung up without replying. When he got home, he slowly walked into the playroom. Everything was perfectly organized but cold. No toys out of their boxes, no drawings taped to the wall. Just Lily, sitting stacking colorful blocks, alone. He knelt down and handed her one of the blocks. The girl looked. For a brief second, their eyes met. And then, like a wire reconnecting, Lily held his hand. Benjamin felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't much, it wasn't a miracle, but it was something. And in that silent touch, he realized she was still there, his daughter, waiting, asking without words for someone to see what the reports couldn't show. It was the beginning of something, or the end of the lie he had been telling himself. And he knew, with a certainty that shook him to the bone, Clara was right. Lily's small hand on Benjamin's still seemed to vibrate against his skin as he came down the stairs that morning. There was something new in his chest, a strange warmth almost forgotten, something that felt like hope. For the first time in a long while, he didn't look away from the house. He noticed the windows, the pictures on the walls, the emptiness that was no longer invisible. In the kitchen, Clara was preparing breakfast with gentle movements and a calm rhythm. She wore a cream-colored blouse with rolled-up sleeves and simple jeans. Her dark brown hair fell loosely, wavy at the ends, with a small clip holding one side. Her dark brown eyes were attentive to every sound Lily made, even if it was just the chair scraping the floor. She rested her head on me last night, Clara said without turning her face. Benjamin stopped in the doorway. I know. I almost cried, but I held it in. I thought any emotion from me might scare hers away. You don't scare her, Clara. His voice came out softer than usual. You reach her. She smiled, still facing away. Lily was sitting at the table, drawing with crayons. She made circular strokes on loose sheets of paper. Beside her, a small portable radio played children's songs at a barely audible volume. But Clara hummed along in a sweet tone, soft as a breeze. It was on a rainy afternoon 3 days later that something happened. The sky poured over Charlotte. Raindrops hit the windows like hurried heartbeats. Clara closed all the windows and made chamomile tea. Lily was curled up on the living room couch, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Her eyes looked sad, but less distant. There was something there, a flicker of presence. That night the house felt darker than usual. The lights were on, but something was missing, as if the furniture had been placed there out of obligation, not desire. The walls were painted in neutral, cold tones. The floorless wooden floor creaked under Benjamin's steps. The only framed photo of his wife sat on the mantel, flanked by 2 unlit candles. Her smile in that photo seemed distant, almost unfamiliar. Benjamin poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood there, staring at the unlit fireplace. His eyes were drawn to the staircase leading to the second floor. He climbed it in silence, like someone stepping into a place that no longer felt like his own. Lily's bedroom door was slightly ajar. He pushed it gently. Clara was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, and Lily was asleep on a blanket on the rug. The teddy bear was wrapped in the girl's arms. For the first time, her breathing was calm. Benjamin stepped closer, slowly. Clara looked up. She didn't say anything, just gave a soft smile, like someone who knew any word could break the sacred stillness. He looked at his daughter for a few seconds, then whispered, "She's better." Clara nodded. Today, she drew for the first time. It was a blue star. She said it was her mommy watching from up above. Benjamin swallowed hard. The whiskey seemed to rise in his throat. He couldn't meet Clara's gaze. He turned toward his daughter and knelt beside her. He ran his fingers through the girl's blonde hair hesitantly, like touching a fragile flower for the first time in years. "I don't know how to do this, Clara." "Do what?" "Be a dad. For real." She answered softly but firmly. "You don't have to know everything right now. You just have to be here. She'll feel it." He stayed there, kneeling beside his sleeping daughter, like someone finally admitting what they had denied for so long, that he was broken. And that maybe there was still time to fix the pieces. The next morning, the sky was overcast. Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. The sheets still smelled like his wife's fabric softener. He hadn't had the courage to change it. When he finally came down to the kitchen, he found Clara placing pancakes on Lily's plate, shaped like hearts. The girl still wasn't speaking, but she looked at the plate and smiled, small, quick, almost unnoticeable. But it was a smile. Benjamin stopped in the doorway as if witnessing a miracle right in front of him. "She smiled," he said, surprised. Clara looked back. She just needed to be seen. But the moment was interrupted by a phone notification. It was from the school. The principal was informing him that due to Lily's non-verbal behavior, she could be placed in a special inclusion program based on previous evaluations. Benjamin frowned. The phone trembled in his hand. Later, while speaking with the same doctor who had signed the report, Benjamin asked, What if you're wrong?" "Mr. Walker, all the signs point to this. Your daughter's reactions, the isolation, it's what we'd call a textbook case. I would recommend continuing with the light medication we prescribed." Benjamin hung up without replying. When he got home, he slowly walked into the playroom. Everything was perfectly organized but cold. No toys out of their boxes, no drawings taped to the wall. Just Lily, sitting stacking colorful blocks, alone. He knelt down and handed her one of the blocks. The girl looked. For a brief second, their eyes met. And then, like a wire reconnecting, Lily held his hand. Benjamin felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't much. It wasn't a miracle. But it was something. And in that silent touch, he realized she was still there. His daughter, waiting, asking without words for someone to see what the reports couldn't show. It was the beginning of something, or the end of the lie he had been telling himself. And he knew, with a certainty that shook him to the bone. Clara was right. Lily's small hand on Benjamin's still seemed to vibrate against his skin as he came down the stairs that morning. There was something new in his chest, a strange warmth almost forgotten, something that felt like hope. For the first time in a long while, he didn't look away from the house. He noticed the windows, the pictures on the walls, the emptiness that was no longer invisible. In the kitchen, Clara was preparing breakfast with gentle movements and a calm rhythm. She wore a cream-colored blouse with rolled-up sleeves and simple jeans. Her dark brown hair fell loosely, wavy at the ends, with a small clip holding one side. Her dark brown eyes were attentive to every sound Lily made, even if it was just the chair scraping the floor. "She rested her head on me last night," Clara said without turning her face. Benjamin stopped in the doorway. I know. I almost cried, but I held it in. I thought any emotion from me might scare hers away. You don't scare her, Clara. His voice came out softer than usual. You reach her. She smiled, still facing away. Lily was sitting at the table, drawing with crayons. She made circular strokes on loose sheets of paper. Beside her, a small portable radio played children's songs at a barely audible volume. But Clara hummed along in a sweet tone, soft as a breeze. It was on a rainy afternoon 3 days later that something happened. The sky poured over Charlotte. Raindrops hit the windows like hurried heartbeats. Clara closed all the windows and made chamomile tea. Lily was curled up on the living room couch, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Her eyes looked sad, but less distant. There was something there, a flicker of presence. Clara sat beside her without touching, just close. She played a soft instrumental song, then started to sing. In Spanish, her voice barely above a whisper. Duerme mi niña, duerme mi sol, que los angelitos te cuidan con amor. It was the same song her grandmother used to sing when Clara cried out of fear or loneliness. She never imagined she'd use it with another child, let alone in that big, cold house. Lily moved. Slowly, she lay down, resting her head on Clara's shoulder. It was a timid gesture, almost unnoticeable, but it was there, real, alive. Clara stopped singing. She stayed still. Her heart was pounding. Tears burned in her eyes, but she didn't move. Benjamin, who had come downstairs quietly, stopped behind the slightly open door. He saw the scene and felt the world shift. It was like seeing his daughter return to the world, not like before, but like she had never been. Later, he approached Clara while she was organizing toys on the shelf. You did something no one else could in months. She turned. I didn't do much. You did. He looked her in the eyes, as if searching for something he couldn't yet name. How did you know? Clara hesitated, then answered calmly, because I was also a child who stopped talking after losing my mom, and no one asked why. They just sent me to therapy. Just another statistic. Benjamin felt the weight of her words. There was no drama in her voice, just truth. Clara wasn't saving Lily out of kindness alone. It was personal, it was intimate. So, you understand? Yes, I understand. His eyes lingered on hers a few seconds longer than they should have. There was a kind of silence there that wasn't uncomfortable. It was something beginning to grow, slowly but firmly, like the root of a tree planted in the most unexpected ground. That night, Clara slept in the room next to Lily's. At the girl's insistence, who now pointed to the extra bed, Benjamin watched from the doorway. Good night, Star, Clara said, tucking Lily in gently. The girl touched her forehead to Clara's. It was the first spontaneous gesture of affection, and it was Lily who spoke, in a whisper as light as wind. Mama. Clara held back her tears. She looked at Benjamin. I heard, he whispered, his voice choked. She felt cared for. The impact of that moment wrapped around them like an invisible current. And in that look exchanged between father and caregiver, between two souls broken by different losses, something subtle was born, but impossible to ignore. A bond, an unspoken promise, and maybe a beginning. The rain tapped insistently on the windows. The sound filled every corner of the house, as if the sky itself also had something to say that no one could quite hear. It was one of those nights when even the air felt heavier, like it carried unspoken secrets. Clara was finishing putting the toys into the living room basket when she heard a raised voice coming from the kitchen. She stopped, listened more closely. Lily, look at me. You have to respond to me somehow, any gesture. You can't just ignore me. Benjamin's voice wasn't aggressive, but it was firm, full of frustration, full of fear. Clara slowly walked into the kitchen. The scene in front of her broke her heart. Lily was sitting in her booster seat, shoulders hunched. Her blue eyes were fixed on the tablecloth. There were no tears, but there was fear. A quiet, suffocated fear, as if she were shrinking from the inside. Benjamin, standing arms crossed, ran a hand through his hair, restless. He wore a dark grey dress shirt, already wrinkled. His face was tense, eyes red. He was at his limit, not with his daughter, but with himself. Clara stepped closer, took a deep breath and spoke firmly without raising her voice. "She's not autistic, Mr. Walker." Benjamin slowly turned, confused, his eyes wide. The silence between them was immediate. The rain outside seemed to pause just to listen. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice low but full of disbelief. "She's afraid. She's grieving. Her language didn't disappear. She hid it because no one taught her it was safe to feel." Benjamin frowned. "You read the reports. The doctors see numbers. I see her." She knelt beside Lily and gently touched the girl's arm. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. You're just trying to protect yourself." Lily pressed her lips together and looked away, but a single tear slid down her pale cheek. Clara then stood slowly. She looked Benjamin in the eye, and that's when she said the words that would change everything. "She's hurting, Mr. Walker, and all she needs is affection." The words weren't shouted. They didn't come as an attack, but as a truth so raw, so honest, that it pierced through his chest like an arrow. Benjamin looked away. He ran a hand over his mouth, then his chin, trying to contain the avalanche building inside him. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel. For a moment he looked like a lost child, trapped in an adult body. "You're saying this is all my fault?" Clara shook her head, eyes filled with tears. "I'm saying your daughter is waiting for you, that it's not too late, but you have to start with her, not with the diagnosis." Silence returned. But now it was different, heavier, more real. Benjamin looked at Lily. The girl was looking back at him now, not with judgment, but with a soft kind of pain, like someone asking for help but not knowing how. He stepped closer. Kneeling beside her chair, he gently touched her little hand. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Lily didn't answer, but she didn't pull her hand away either. Clara stepped back quietly, giving them space. As she passed through the door, Benjamin was still kneeling, holding that fragile hand as if it were the last thing in the world capable of saving him from himself. And maybe it was. The room was bathed in soft morning light. The white curtains danced with the breeze, and for the first time in a long time, the sound filling the house wasn't just the ticking clock or Benjamin's hurried footsteps, but the gentle melody of a children's song playing from the bathroom radio. Clara knelt on the light ceramic floor, her sleeves rolled up to the elbows, gently soaking Lily's feet in a basin of warm lavender water. The little girl giggled quietly, eyes half closed, cheeks flushed. That shy laugh, muted like someone still asking for permission to be happy, was more precious than any diagnosis. Suddenly, Clara lightly squeezed the soles of the girl's feet, tickling her. "Oh no, the tickle monster is coming back!" Lily squirmed, letting out a real clear laugh that filled the bathroom like a breath of life. Benjamin stopped at the half-open door. He was in a suit, ready for a meeting, but his briefcase slipped from his hand without him noticing. He stood there frozen, as if time had stopped, his eyes filled with tears he didn't expect. That laughter, that joy, felt like it came from another world, a world he thought he'd never hear again. Clara kept playing, unaware of his presence. "One more giggle and the bath fairy will leave glitter on your pillow." Lily covered her face with her hands, laughing louder. And Benjamin, on the other side of the door, felt something inside him tremble. Something loosened, a weight, a guilt. A space he didn't even know existed was beginning to open. That night, For the first time in months, he didn't have dinner, alone in front of the computer. He sat at the kitchen table earlier just to listen to the conversation between Clara and Lily. Even if Lily still spoke very little, the sounds she made, the gestures, the looks, it was all communication. Clara understood every detail. Benjamin watched from a distance, and slowly, he didn't just see the dedicated Nanny anymore. He saw a woman with quiet strength, immense sweetness, someone who filled the house with something he had forgotten existed, warmth. He started to notice the little things, the way Clara ran her fingers through her hair when she was thinking, the care she took in fixing Lily's bow before breakfast, the way she hummed while doing the dishes, the soft laugh that escaped when the girl made a silly face. In that laugh, there was something that moved him, an invitation, a reminder that there was still beauty in the ordinary. On a particularly cold night, Clara was making hot chocolate in the kitchen. She wore a loose sweatshirt and simple slippers. Benjamin approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "You know that when she laughed this morning, it was the first time since the funeral?" Clara turned, holding 2 steaming mugs. "I figured. I almost didn't recognize the sound." She looked at him for a long second. "Sometimes laughter is just the soul whispering that it's trying to come back." Benjamin took a deep breath. He took the mug. Their fingers touched for a brief moment. He didn't say anything, but Clara felt his gaze linger on her face a little too long. Lily, from the living room, called out softly, "Chocolate!" Clara laughed. "We better go before it gets cold." Benjamin followed her, but something in him had already changed. It wasn't just his daughter's transformation that moved him now. It was Clara's presence, the way she filled the empty spaces of the house without promising anything, without intruding, just existing with truth. And that night, as he went upstairs to sleep, he stopped in front of Elizabeth's old bedroom door. He looked at the doorknob but didn't go in. He only whispered, "She laughed today. Did you hear? You hear?" Then he walked to his daughter's room, opened the door slowly, and found her asleep with Clara beside her, holding her small hand. And on Lily's face, there was still a smile. The house, once made only of concrete and silence, now seemed to breathe with different sounds. Soft laughter, lighter footsteps, the clinking of spoons in the nightly tea. There was life in the details, in the small gestures that had once gone unnoticed. And among those details, a new ritual had emerged, story time. Every night, Lily waited sitting on the bed, eyes shining, already in her blue, starry pajamas. Her slightly messy blonde hair fell over her small shoulders. Next to her, Clara arranged a small stack of colorful children's books. The bedside lamp cast a soft glow over the room, creating an almost magical atmosphere. That night, Benjamin appeared with a light smile on his lips and a blanket in his hands. "Can I help with the reading tonight?" he asked, hesitant. Clara nodded calmly. "Of course. I think Lily would love that." Lily looked at her father. She didn't say anything, but she leaned in, inviting him with her body. It was her way of saying yes. Benjamin sat next to his daughter. Clara took the other side. She reached for the book on top, a story about a lion who was afraid of the dark. At the same time, Benjamin did. Their fingers touched. It was a moment, just skin against skin, but long enough for them to look at each other caught off guard. Her eyes, warm brown, met his, bluish-gray and softer than usual, and time seemed to slow down. There were no words, just that new silence. A silence that didn't weigh anything but said everything. A silence that asked for presence. Benjamin was the first to look away, swallowing hard. "You start," he murmured, handing the book to Clara. She opened the cover with slightly trembling fingers and began to read. "Once upon a time there was a lion who, even though he was big and strong, would tremble just hearing the sound of thunder. As she read, Clara felt Benjamin's gaze return to her in intervals. It wasn't just admiration. It was as if he were rediscovering the language of care, as if in that moment, between simple sentences and magical characters, something new was growing, something that didn't need words. By the time Clara finished the story, Lily was already fighting sleep, her face resting on the pillow, long, eyelashes fluttering slightly. Benjamin stood up slowly and pulled the blanket over his daughter's body. Then he looked at Clara. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "For what?" "For being here." Clara smiled, but didn't answer. Those words carried more than he could admit. In the days that followed, the ritual repeated itself, and Benjamin started looking forward to that moment with a sense of anticipation he tried to hide. He spent more time at home, scheduled meetings earlier, turned off his phone during dinner. He was learning how to be present, and without realizing it, he was allowing himself to be affected. The touch of fingers happened again another night, this time at the end of a story about butterflies that didn't know how to fly. Clara and Benjamin laughed together at Lily's innocence as she tried to imitate the fluttering of the characters. They laughed with their eyes, their shoulders, their close bodies. And when their eyes met again, there was an unspoken question. In the air, something between them was changing, something growing slowly but with deep roots. And Benjamin was starting to long not only for his daughter's smiles, but for Clara's silences, her way of listening, her subtle scent of lavender and tea, her quiet care, her presence that made him feel less alone. That night he didn't sleep in his usual room. He sat in the living room armchair until dawn, staring at the unlit fireplace, thinking, feeling. For the first time in years, feeling everything. And without saying it out loud, he understood that something was being born there, and that it might be much more than he ever imagined. Night fell over Charlotte with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the cold silence that had hung over the house months ago. Now it was a soft silence, filled with the sound of a sleeping child's breathing and the gentle creaking of a rocking chair in the corner of the room. Clara was sitting there, with Lily in her lap, completely surrendered to sleep. The little girl wore pink pajamas with moons and stars, and her golden hair was spread across Clara's chest as if seeking shelter. The small body of the girl breathed lightly, almost in sync with the chest of the woman who had now become her safe place. Benjamin watched from the doorway. He said nothing. He just stood there, motionless, with his hands in the pockets of his dark pants, watching the scene with a sweet ache in his chest. Clara wore a navy blue wool sweater, and her hair was tied in a messy bun with a few loose strands falling around her face. The warm light from the lamp cast soft shadows across her profile. He walked slowly toward the couch, holding a grey blanket. Clara looked up. The glance they exchanged was direct, intimate, filled with something no words could define. Benjamin knelt down, covered Clara's legs and Lily's body with the blanket, and then, instead of pulling away, he stayed there on his knees. His eyes lingered on hers, and for a moment, time seemed to forget to move. "You're tired," he whispered. Clara smiled gently. "She took a while to fall asleep tonight. She kept telling me a made-up story. I think she didn't want the day to end." Benjamin rested one hand on the arm of the chair and the other slowly moved to Clara's face. He touched her cheek with his fingertips, as if testing the reality of a dream. Her skin was warm, soft, alive. She held her breath. He leaned closer, slowly. His heart was pounding in his chest. Their faces were just inches apart. And in her eyes, he saw something that froze him. Truth. The kind of truth not found in contracts or promises. The kind that only exists between people who truly see each other. But when their lips were just about to meet, Clara closed her eyes and gently turned her face away. The gesture wasn't abrupt. It was full of tenderness, but also firmness. She spoke quietly, but every word was crystal clear. "You're still learning how to feel again, and I don't want to be just another escape." Benjamin pulled back, surprised. Her words hit him with a kind of honesty that was almost cruel, but necessary. He looked down, ran a hand over his face, and sighed. "I'm sorry, I thought it was the right moment." Clara placed her hand over his. "It was beautiful, but it's not the time. Not while you're still trying to fill the hole of pain with another kind of absence." He nodded silently. Lily shifted in her lap, tugging at the sleeve of Clara's shirt with her small fingers. Clara adjusted the girl, gently laying her down on the couch. Benjamin helped with the pillow. Neither of them said another word. But the silence between them now was different from all the ones before. It was a silence missing what had not yet happened, a silence full of promise. And when Benjamin went up the stairs that night, he felt something ache, not because of the refusal, but because of what she had done with tenderness, reminded him that love isn't built in a rush, and that to love someone like Clara, he would first need to rebuild himself completely. The next morning broke grayer than usual. The forecast called for sun, but the sky seemed to reflect exactly what lingered in the house, a sense of coming loss. Benjamin came downstairs adjusting the buttons of his shirt, still wrapped in the silence of the night before. His eyes were sunken and his thoughts far away. Clara prepared breakfast with her usual movements, but something about her was different, more reserved, quieter. Lily, sitting at the table, watched them both closely. Even without fully understanding, the girl seemed to sense that something was coming. The intercom rang just before 8. Clara went to answer it without hurry, as she always did. But when she heard the voice on the other end, she turned pale. "Good morning, Child Protective Services. We're here to speak with Mr. Walker about the employee Clara Mendez." Benjamin heard from the living room. He stood up immediately. "What do you mean, Child Protective Services?" His voice already carried a tone of alarm. 2 agents, a woman in a beige blazer and a stern-looking man, were welcomed into the living room. Clara remained standing by the bookshelf, her trembling hands clenching her fingers. The woman began with a neutral tone. "We received an anonymous report. There are concerns about the emotional bond formed between the caregiver and your daughter. It was alleged that the involvement went beyond what's acceptable and that the child has become emotionally dependent." Benjamin furrowed his brow, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Is this a joke? Clara is the only reason my daughter started smiling again." The woman kept her tone firm. "Ms. Mendez does not hold a validated license to practice as a child therapist, and considering the child's vulnerability, we must proceed with caution." Clara tried to maintain her composure, but her eyes already shimmered with unshed tears. "I never did anything but love that child like she was mine, not out of duty, out of instinct." "That's exactly the issue," the agent replied. "It's that emotional intensity that raises concern." Lily, who had heard part of the conversation from the stairs, ran down and clung to Clara's leg, her eyes full of tears. "Don't go," she whispered, her voice fragile. Clara knelt down and held the girl's face between her hands. "My love, we have to trust. Sometimes, when you love someone, you also have to wait." Benjamin stepped closer, outraged. "Who made this report? A neighbor? Someone from the school? This is personal, isn't it?" Clara didn't do anything wrong, but it was useless in that moment. The decision had already been made. Clara would need to leave the house until the matter was investigated. She went upstairs in silence to get her things. Benjamin remained in the living room, frozen. When she came down with the backpack on her shoulders, Lily was quietly crying on the couch. The pain in that cry felt like a knife to the chest. Clara approached Benjamin. For a second, he thought about saying how he felt, shouting that he wouldn't let this happen. But when her eyes met his, it was she who spoke first. You have to be strong for her now, and I have to trust that if it's meant to be, you'll find me again. Benjamin clenched his fists, his throat dry. The world felt like it was collapsing. She kissed Lily's forehead, tightened the strap of her backpack and walked out, and then the emptiness returned to the house. But this time it was different. It wasn't the same silence as before. It was absence. Absence of laughter, of music, of warm tea, of a soft voice telling bedtime stories. That night, Benjamin tried to distract Lily with a book, but she didn't respond. She refused to eat, cried until she fell asleep from exhaustion in his arms. Sitting beside the bed, he stared at the ceiling for long minutes. The guilt crushed him. Now he knew. Clara wasn't just the nanny. She was the point of light that had entered the darkness of their lives. And now, torn away by blind hands, she left behind an unbearable void. He wasn't just losing the woman who helped his daughter come back to life. He was losing the only woman who made him feel again, and this time he wouldn't let the silence win. Charlotte slept under a clear, endless sky, sprinkled with stars that seemed to watch over the world in silence. The night was cool, with a light wind blowing through the trees lining the residential streets. On the sidewalks, dry leaves danced alone. Benjamin parked the car, the engine still running for a few seconds. His hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. The simple bouquet rested on the passenger seat, white daisies intertwined with sprigs of lavender tied with rustic twine. There was no luxury. There was truth. He picked up the flowers carefully, as if any clumsy move might unravel the courage it had taken so long to gather. He walked to the small one-story house, light-colored with a hand-painted wooden porch. Warm light escaped through the curtains in the living room. He stopped in front of the door, took a deep breath, knocked. Once, then again. The doorknob turned slowly. Clara appeared, barefoot, wearing a faded blue cotton shirt and sweatpants. Her hair was down, soft waves falling over her shoulders. Her face was bare without makeup, with light circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights. But her eyes, those deep honey-colored eyes, still held the same flame. Benjamin. Her voice came out low, surprised, almost a whisper on the wind. He stepped forward, raising the flowers in both hands. His breath was shaky, his eyes wet. I needed to see you. I tried to pretend I could handle your absence, but I can't. She hesitated, looking at him as if afraid to believe what she was hearing. You saved me, Clara. His voice trembled. You saved my daughter. You saved parts of me I didn't even know were still alive. She opened the door fully but said nothing. Just listened, heart pounding, eyes beginning to fill. I don't know how to live without seeing you dance with Lily on the living room rug, without hearing your laughter while you hum in the kitchen. He swallowed hard. I don't want to just survive anymore, Clara. I want to love, with everything that comes with it. Clara stepped down from the porch, still not approaching. She stood still, looking at him like someone staring into a soul's mirror. Will you let me? Benjamin whispered. Will you let me love you? She finally stepped closer, just inches from him. The bouquet stood between them, and she took it slowly, holding it like someone receiving a confession. The tears came, warm, silent. I waited for this moment. She smiled through the tears. But I needed it to come from your heart, not your emptiness. Benjamin cupped her face with both hands. His thumbs gently wiped away her tears. His eyes were shining too. But it was a different kind of light. Now, the kind that comes when you've finally found somewhere to rest. He leaned in, slowly, his eyes still locked with hers. The kiss happened in silence. Deep, slow, true. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't driven by fleeting desire. It was full of past, of pain overcome, of recognized scars and the promise of a future that at last could be light. She gave in without fear, wrapped her arms around him, feeling the warmth of his body and the security he had never been able to offer anyone before. There, on that simple porch, under a sky dotted with stars, they broke the last of their defenses. When their lips parted, he rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. "You came from where my life began again," he whispered. She smiled, a small, fragile smile, but full of certainty. On the other side of the street, a dog barked. A car passed slowly. But for them, the world had stopped. That night, Clara was no longer alone, and Benjamin was no longer lost. And even without words, they both knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning didn't just bring light through the windows of Clara's small house. It brought a sense of new beginnings that spread through the air like the fresh scent on clean sheets. For the first time in a long time, Clara woke up with a light heart. Still lying down, she felt the warmth of Benjamin's body beside her, sleeping deeply, like someone who had finally found peace after years of internal war. She got up slowly, walked to the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker, and watched the steam rise. The aroma filled the space with memories of comfort. She smiled to herself. Hours later, the three of them were in the old home, Benjamin and Lily's, but now it had taken on new contours. Clara walked in with a small suitcase in her hand. She didn't bring much, only the essentials. The rest would come with time. The most important part was already there. Herself, whole. Benjamin, wearing dark jeans and a simple t-shirt, held a box of Lily's drawings. On his face was a new kind of serenity, a quiet pride, a love he no longer tried to hide. Lily stood in the middle of the living room, in colorful socks and a light blue sweatshirt. When she saw Clara walk through the door, she ran to her with a wide smile and, without saying a word, hugged her tightly around the waist. She stayed there, eyes closed, as if refusing to let go. Clara knelt down, gently stroking the girl's hair. That's when Lily opened her eyes and said sweetly, "Now my house smells like flowers." Benjamin watched the scene, moved. His heart felt like it might burst. Clara looked at him over Lily's shoulder, and in that look there was something unshakable, not a promise, but a certainty. "I don't want you to stay just as the caregiver or as a guest. I want you to stay as part of all this, of us." She took a deep breath, emotional. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." In the days that followed, the house transformed. Clara brought her music, her books, her light. Benjamin adapted his office, creating a shared space where Lily could draw while he worked. The scent of lavender once again filled the rooms, and the nights now featured story time for three. But there was something greater growing inside, that space. Something they both knew needed to go beyond them. One Sunday afternoon, sitting in the backyard between pots of herbs and wooden chairs, Clara shared a wish. "You know what hurts the most about all of this? How many children out there are suffering in silence, like Lily was, with no one who really sees them." Benjamin thought for a moment. What if we created a place where they could be seen, where they could express themselves without rushed diagnoses, without labels, just feeling, with music, art, stories told from the heart, and real therapists, and people like you. She smiled, touching his hand. People like us. Months later, the Clara Star Center was born, a community space in Charlotte dedicated to children going through grief or emotional isolation. There were no white coats there, only colorful fabrics, floor cushions, accessible musical instruments, books with vivid illustrations, and walls covered in drawings by little artists. Storytelling workshops, listening circles, painting afternoons, and peer support sessions filled the weekly schedule. And Lily, now more open, more talkative, walked the halls like the house mascot, offering spontaneous hugs and drawings filled with blue stars. On one of those afternoons, Clara and Benjamin watched through the window as the girl explained to another child that the stars on the ceiling weren't just lights, they were wishes that became a place. Benjamin smiled, eyes misty. She found her place in the world because you taught me how to find mine. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. We didn't just save her, Ben. We saved ourselves too. And there, in that peaceful embrace, something even greater than love was born, a legacy. The afternoon slowly descended over Charlotte. The sky looked hand-painted in shades of honey and lavender, as if nature itself had decided to honor the moment. A warm breeze flowed through the freshly painted gardens of the Clara Star Center, carrying the scent of flowers planted by dozens of small hands, children who, like Lily, had found their way back to the world. The courtyard was full. Parents, therapists, neighbors, local journalists. Colorful chairs were spread out beneath a white canopy. Children ran between the adults with painted faces, holding toy guitars, paintbrushes, or books. It was more than an opening. It was a rebirth. Clara, in a light beige long dress with her hair tied up and decorated with natural flowers, moved through the guests with a humble and welcoming smile. Her eyes were slightly smudged, not with makeup, but with emotion. Benjamin wore a white shirt, khaki pants, and simple shoes, but his face, once marked by exhaustion and fear, now carried something else, something only love and steady presence can bring back. Peace. He stepped up to the small makeshift stage, took a deep breath as he held the microphone, looked at the crowd, then fixed his eyes on Clara. I've never been good with words, he began. I've always been the type who solves things with deadlines, goals, spreadsheets. When my wife died, I reacted the same way I've always reacted to everything, trying to control the pain like it was a number. But pain doesn't go away with logic, and love doesn't either. The audience fell silent. Some parents lowered their heads, others held their children's hands. Lily, my daughter, stopped speaking, and I stopped listening. I hid behind diagnoses, behind specialists, and I almost lost what I had left. He looked at his daughter, sitting in the front row, holding a notebook full of drawings. She smiled, eyes shining. Then one day, a woman walked into my house, in simple clothes, with a shy smile, and eyes that saw beyond the surface. She didn't come with titles. She didn't bring formulas. She brought something no one else had the courage to offer: presence. Clara tried to hold back her tears, but the emotion rolled freely down her cheeks. She sat on the floor when everyone else preferred to keep their distance. She listened when no one knew what to ask. She taught me that silence is a language, too. And that wounds don't need urgency, they need space, time, and love. Pause. Today I know that love doesn't heal with medicine. It heals with presence, with touch, with a look, with patience. The audience applauded silently through quiet tears. Benjamin continued, and that's why we're here today. This center was born from love, from our grief, from our failures, from our scars, but above all, from our choice not to repeat abandonment. He lowered the microphone. Clara stepped forward, and he held out his hand. The two of them stood together at the center of the stage. Lily stood up and ran to them, hugging both at once, as if completing a circle of affection. She rested her face on Clara's shoulder and with a sweet and confident voice said, "Now my house smells like flowers." The crowd laughed through tears. It was spontaneous, pure, honest. Benjamin crouched down and lifted Lily into his arms. Clara wrapped her arms around both of them. The three of them on that stage looked like a portrait life had tried to tear apart, but love had pieced back together with patience. And in that moment, The sun touched the top of the canopy. A golden beam of light passed through the white curtains and settled on them like a silent blessing. Birds flew low across the sky, as if moving slower than usual. And for a brief moment, everything, the time, the wind, the past pain, paused. Because where there is true affection, there is a miracle. And there, in front of an entire community, a family that almost lost itself was found again. Not perfect, but real. And that was more than enough. Leave your rating in the comments from 0 to 10. I'd love to know how this journey touched you. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe. And to the channel. It helps me keep bringing more stories like this, full of truth, emotion, and new beginnings. And before you go, I've picked another moving story, even deeper, that will surely touch you in a special way. Go check it out.